Coming on.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good to see you.
Think we got all of them on.
Good afternoon, everyone. I know you all have been with us a few times, hopefully, and I hope we have some new people as well. But one thing we like to see is we'd like for you to put in the chat where you are physically today. And also, please share your contact information, your LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever way is best for us to get in touch with you. Please put that in the chat because we're trying to build community and we want to be sure that we can find you. This has been great for networking as well as information. So please do that for us and for those that are on the call. And thank you all for being here.
Eric, I didn't realize you were in the DMV area.
I am. I'm in Virginia outside of DC.
I used to live in Falls Church, right outside of.
Okay, yep, right. I'm right in that area.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
A lot of people up there now. It's like really congested around the what is it?
Beltway.
495, right?
Mm-hmm. Welcome, welcome. Feel free to share where you're calling in from, and as well as put your LinkedIn or contact information in the chat. We would love to stay in community. Welcome, welcome.
Great. Lauren, Tranika, close out that room. Y'all don't even
All
know.
right, we got North Carolina.
Desiree.
Welcome, welcome. Feel free to share where you're calling in from, as well as your LinkedIn or contact information. We would love to stay in community. All right, letting some more people in.
This is great.
Okay, Bowie,
Bowie, man.
Miami.
My
Welcome,
family.
welcome. Leroy, where you coming? Where you coming from? All right, Jimmy. Hello,
Hi, Eric.
everyone. Hello, everyone.
Winston-Salem.
Okay, excellent. Welcome. Happy to have you here.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Welcome, Desiree, Lauren. All right, PA's in the house. Feel free to share where you're dialing in from, as well as your LinkedIn information. We would love to stay in contact. You're in for a treat. I am super excited for this session. I've had the opportunity to hear this brother share throughout the week and really share his wisdom. And now we get to hear him for a full session. And so we are excited. Glad you took the time to join this session. For those who are coming in for the first time, this is an exciting first annual National Black AI Literacy Week. And we've had full packed sessions throughout the week this day around AI literacy and just being able to explore the impact of AI as it relates to our community. And I am excited to be your moderator for today. And so definitely want to keep things engaged in the chat. And when the time presents itself, I definitely want to hear from you as well. And so today we have a full exciting agenda, and I want to take a moment to shout out Stefan and Patty for leading the way, the vision for this conference. And I'm gonna give it some more time to let some other people join, but we just really appreciate your leadership and being able to make this a reality for the community.
Atlanta, Georgia down here. Illinois. Okay, getting ready for camp. Pennsylvania.
Mic check.
All right. Welcome, welcome. All right, a lot of people from North Carolina in the house today.
Yeah. Mr. Jimmy Davies in the house. Dot Black.
Welcome, welcome. If you haven't already, feel free to share where you're dialing in from, as well as sharing your contact information so we can stay in community. You are in for a treat with today's session. We will be getting started momentarily. Shout out for those that are here in the room in Zoom. We're also broadcasting to YouTube. And so looking forward to your engagement for those that are here in the room. All right, Calvin. Yes, this has been a phenomenal week thus far and experience. I appreciate the gratitude in the chat. Welcome, welcome for those who are just joining. Feel free to share where you're dialing in from in the chat, as well as share your contact information. We love to stay in contact and community. Good afternoon once again, and welcome to the first annual National Black AI Literacy Week. We are about to get started here with an additional session. I really am honored to have the opportunity to introduce today's speaker and topic around AI and its impact in various levels of education and policy. And so without further ado, I'll let Husan introduce himself and get things started, but feel free to raise your hand virtually, ask questions in the chat, and I will be here to be able to facilitate the questions that you have. And so without further ado, I want to hand it over to you, Husan.
Thanks, Eric. I appreciate it. If I can be heard okay. I'm blown away by how this week has gone. Shout out to Stefan, Patty, and all the folks who've been working behind the scenes to bring this week together, and to the people. Lauren, I mean, we friends by now. Like,
That's right.
a lot of folks have been consistent and have really supported this effort, and I'm just so grateful. And the quality of the content, which puts me in an awkward situation, because how do I follow what has happened so far? I mean, the immediate previous presentation, Stefan was talking about bots and God, like the prayer shut it down. How do I follow? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm nervous. I'm just rambling. Let me say,
Do your thing.
my name is Husan Thompson. I've been a long time educator. I started my first classroom in 2001, which was the same year that George Bush passed the No Child Left Behind Act. And while there may be a lot to say about the law and the subsequent laws that have been passed since then, what I have witnessed and been party to is a steady decline over the course of a generation as it relates to the outcomes of our students. We're at a point now where, how do I say this? There is a 90 out of 100 random students in California, Black boys, a random sample, 4 of them by the 12th grade will be reading at the 12th grade level. I have a 7-year-old son, and my primary concern here is that the odds are not in my favor. And I'm a professional educator. I have unique skills. I have a great capacity, but 4 out of 100 are tall statistics. And so while I have been party to that decline, I'm in a position now to do something to change it. And because I have a lot on the line, my own kid's future is on the line. And so rather than just focus on him, I'm really interested in making some impact in the field in general. So I am the founder and operator of the Educator's House. It is a new startup where I plan to speak truth to power and bring some critical conversations about what's been happening, not only for professional educators, but also parents of school-aged children and community members who are generally concerned about what's going on. I thought initially that I would be delivering this presentation to fellow educators. But what I've learned over the course of the week is that really who I'm talking to are AI experts, enthusiasts, and technicians. So with that said, I've shifted the tone of my conversation a bit to try and highlight where the opportunities are in my field so that those of you who are creatively intelligent can figure out at what level and in what ways you can bring artificial intelligence into the professional education space. I think there's room not only in your traditional public school system, but I also see a lot of runway when it comes to the charter schools that are out there, because they're much smaller school districts and can be more nimble in responding to what happens with artificial intelligence in the classroom. But it can also be extremely relevant to the homeschool parent who's not only the administrator, but also the teacher and the school nurse and the counselor. And so in that sense, anything that can be done at the homeschool level to help lighten that load, to help make experts out of laypersons is certainly, I think, a lot of room. So I'm going to be talking today about at 3 different levels and ways that I think you guys as AI professionals and enthusiasts can engage not only your local district, but also your local school or even a single classroom teacher. So I do have a little slide. I'm not as good at AI as you guys. So I'm actually going to be talking bad about Gamma over here. Let me share this screen and I'm going to jump right into it. Let's see if I can get this together. All right, let's take a look at this. I don't want to spend too much time on the main screen because I do want to get us to engage in some dialogue. But as I go through these levels or these aspects of my presentation, there's 2 ways that I think we can do this. Either between each level, we can engage in some dialogue, maybe some questions, maybe some thoughts. I'm definitely down for brainstorming. Or we can do all 3 segments and then do a big Q&A. But I think it would be good if we could break it up. So think about what you might want to say or some questions that you might have as I go through each phase. This was produced by good old Gamma. Gamma, my man Stefan introduced me to Gamma. And while I generally do maybe a Google slide or a PowerPoint from scratch, I said, you know what, let me just give it a try. So I went over to Gamma, I put my general outline into the system, and out comes this. Do I love it? No. But what I can say, and what I think we've heard over the course of the week, is that it was far easier for me to go from this and then fine tune it into something that is usable than to go from a blank slate. And I think that's one of the things that I've learned through my experience with artificial intelligence. It's not here to replace us, but it is here to make me better at what I do. And given my experience over the week, hosting, moderating, and co-hosting conversations, I really haven't had a lot of time. So I'm thinking, oh, I'll get to it. Okay. And then yesterday comes and my son and I decided to spend some real quality time together. So we went out, hung out all day. And so then today it's like, oh, I got to get it together. So I'm up at like 2 in the morning And at 2:02, I had a nice little skeleton, and then I just had to fine tune. So it really did accelerate some of the thoughts that I already had in mind, and I was able to turn this into more of a direct presentation. Okay, so with that said, yeah, it gave me the image. As you can see, it's a AI generated image. It really isn't about education, but it's cool, and I could easily replace it. Here's the next slide that it produced. And once again, you can see this funny looking man with the weird nose. So it did try to generate an image for me, which I appreciate, but it did give me the format. What it produced initially from my outline was absolute garbage. But what it did do and what I appreciate is the formatting. It gave me these cool colors and these numbers. And now I can just talk to you based on a little bit of formatting. So let's talk about the first level, which for me is what I call the enterprise level or the district level. So if you are into AI and you understand this technology better than I do, I would like you to seriously consider revenue streams, because the field of education is far behind all of us in this room. I can almost guarantee when it comes to thinking about, when it comes to ways of integrating, when it comes to setting up appropriate guardrails, when it comes to thoughts about student interfacing. We as a field are far behind what's happening in technology these days. And so I really want to encourage you guys to think about how you could turn your skill set into a revenue stream by tapping into your local school district, perhaps even at the state level. I haven't gone that high, but here are 6 areas that I would like us to consider when it comes to how technologists like yourself can bring artificial intelligence into education. And the first one is about protocols. The question is, how can you use artificial intelligence to collect student data, to store student data, and how to handle that student data? I think artificial intelligence has the capacity to bring all of this and synthesize it in a really interesting way. But I think it needs to be onboarded. And while there are some traditional ways to do that, what we see here is another level where we can not only take that data, but then do things with it. So at the district level, because they're primarily concerned about liability, when they do make the transition of bringing an artificially intelligent system onto their district level servers, they've got to be seriously concerned about where their data is going. And so one of the things that I think we could think about is, how are we going to frame that data being uploaded into a system? What's going to happen in that system? And I'll talk about a few of those. And then how are we getting that those outputs back out to the people, the practitioners in the field? And so thinking about those kinds of protocols and broad guardrails when it comes to the collection, storage, and handling of student data is a pretty big deal, which brings me to number 2, the issues of compliance. There are 3 big things, and I think at least 2 of them have already come up in previous sessions. I want to say one of them came from the Anointed Attorneys presentation. So if you haven't seen it, see if you can try to find the replay. But there is an acronym called GDPR, which is the General Data Protection Regulations. It's an international regulation document that talks about how to generally protect people's data. So that's something that these schools are going to need to be in compliance with. Someone did mention to me that the United States is not a signatory on that document, but I think from an international perspective, it's something to consider. Another one that you may want to write down and do some research on is COPPA, which is the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, COPPA. This will also provide some guidance to you when it comes to how we are intentional about protecting children's privacy and their data when using online systems. And the third one, when it comes to the issue of compliance that you should consider, is FERPA, which is the Family Education Rights and Protection Act, FERPA. This is the law that protects children's privacy when it comes specifically to education. This is why it's not appropriate for a teacher to, announce in the classroom where each student grades are. This is why we have to have parent-teacher conferences individually rather than in groups, because it is illegal for us to share students' personal academic data to others. It is meant only for themselves. So when you're thinking about your online system that you might create and then sell to a district, make sure that you have these sorts of guiding documents in mind. And I also would recommend putting them in the forefront that you are compliant with these guidelines. When it comes to number three, security and privacy, it is going to be imperative that you are very intentional when creating a district level system that has security at the forefront. And so it will help you with the compliance piece. It also deals with the protocol piece. So in what ways are you encrypting that data so that as it transfers across networks, it can't be read by third parties? In what ways can you balance that issue of security and your firewalls with efficiency and the user experience? So I'll share a brief story here, which deals with the last school that I worked at, we had a system called, what was it called? Power School and Power Teacher. It's pretty popular if you're a parent of a school-age child. Our school then added another layer of protection, which I appreciate. What happened was it would automatically log the teacher out after, let's say, 5 or 10 minutes of non-use, and then the teacher would have to log back in. Okay. Then when we added the 2FA, when we tried to log back in, they had to send that 4 or 6 digit code to our phone, and then we would use that phone in order to authenticate ourselves to get back in. And then 5 minutes later, it would log us back out. And so when I'm teaching in real time and I'm up or I'm guiding conversation and I'm dealing with students, it is extremely problematic from the user experience when getting onto the systems. And so finding that proper balance between ways to protect student data, but also making it efficient and a positive user experience for me, the teacher, is going to be critical, because otherwise I'm not going to do it. And the truth of the matter is, at the end of the day is when most of us do it, where most of us are doing that grading, that data upload, the parent calls, and all of that on our own personal hours. And so if there's a way that you guys as technologists can help us make that system more efficient, or a way that we can communicate, right, with others in real time, would be a fantastic way. And I think you can onboard a lot of educators if there's a way that you can help us figure out how to be more efficient. And I think artificial intelligence is definitely the way to do that. When I think about the issues of transparency, and if you're going to make a product that the district is going to purchase, then it's going to be important to talk about, for example, being clear about the type of data that you collect, being clear about the reasons that you're using that data, what measures you're taking to protect the data that you have your hands on, and then how will people be able to report out, see something, say something is a term that we use in education a lot. If there are concerns or complaints, is there an easy way for us to address those? So if you're a third-party company, keep in mind, you're going to be dealing with federally protected student data. And so your capacity to be transparent about how you're using that data, not only with the district level people who are not technologists, but also the parents, how you're going to protect that data, why you're using the data, why you're collecting the data, all of that, all those layers of transparency should be embedded in the product that you're going to create at a district level. And then the next one is number 5. I don't know when was the last time that you had to request a transcript, but schools keep your records. And so dealing with not only how you're going to hold on to those records, and those records are going to be protected on some sort of server, but in what ways are you going to dispose of that data as well? So thinking, for example, about how long you need to hold that data if a student transfers. Now you have an interoperability issue, because if you have some new online system that you've sold to your school district, but then that student moves to another school district, are you going to be able to send that data to someone who hasn't onboarded to your system, right? And so thinking about how you're going to hold on to that data, transfer it, and send it, and then dispose of it over time is also a big consideration. The last thing that I want to talk about, and then perhaps we can open it up for a little round of dialogue, is the issue of bias. And this has been something that we've talked about a lot. And I think in this particular space, it is not only nefarious, but it's really quite dangerous, because we're talking now, Child, I'm about to get on my preacher. Lauren, you better hold me back.
I'm not gonna try. Come on now, let's go.
We already have a tradition of bias in education. I know, but I want to just make sure it's clear for everyone in the room. When you think about suspension rates, our kids are the ones at the top of that list. When you think about expulsion rates, it's our kids who are at the top of that list. When you think about issues of attendance, it's our families that have the worst attendance across the board, right? The data proves this out. When you think about the number of students who are being pushed into special education inappropriately, it's oftentimes our students. There is also the popular school to prison pipeline. And so the data has come out that indicates that how fourth graders read will determine how many prisons need to be built. And so there is a direct line between the issues of bias that we have traditionally seen. And now that we're going to talk about bringing artificial intelligence on, there is already inherent bias. And so one of the things, if you're going to create, for example, a unique large language model, or you're going to train some system on very particular data, someone has told me about that. You can just upload your data set, and then it can use that as its own data set, as its own language model. That data comes into your system already with some inherent bias. And so I just want to make sure that we're thinking about not only the historical data that we're going to bring into the system and how the algorithm, no matter how good it is, if it has bias-based data, it's going to give you some problematic outputs. And so thinking about how that data is going to be formed is a big issue as far as I'm concerned when it comes to bias. The other thing that I find interesting as it relates to the impact of bias is when it comes to adaptive learning or content recommendations. Some of you may be thinking about a system that when a student gives a particular answer, it will respond in one of several ways. And so how this system adapts, I think, is also an opportunity where bias can come in. And what it recommends next is also something that you need to be considering. And so if you have a product that is specifically designed, let's say, for an urban school system in Los Angeles Unified, then there's an opportunity there for you to think about how you're going to allow your AI system to come up with the next decision. And so thinking those things through, I think, deals at the large language model basis. But then, and this is part of my transition to the second level, I also want you to really be courageous when it comes to assessment and evaluation. Since No Child Left Behind was passed, we consider assessment a multiple choice test that happens at the end of the year. It is delivered by the state. Here we have an opportunity to radically redefine how we assess student mastery and how we evaluate student performance. It no longer has to be a Scantron. You guys may remember that old Ditto machine and the Scantrons with the purple and you run it through and my educators may know. Now we have it's all digital. And so the capacity to reimagine how we're assessing what students are learning and the learning experiences is a very big runway for some of you to be creative. So those are my thoughts about the enterprise level. Eric, if you want, I'm going to stop this share and then maybe we can see if there's any questions and then I'll jump back in.
No, excellent. There's a few questions. Feel free to add additional ones to the chat. One of the things that stood out is how can we have more Black men in the classroom and the impact on the students? Some of the stats you mentioned were alarming. And so how can we have more influence of Black leaders in the classroom or being able to support learning and development of our youth?
That is a huge question. And it's not an easy one to address because I'm a Black man, right? So I can speak from my own skin experience. I find myself constantly between a rock and a hard place. On the one hand, the field is dominated by white women, and the data demonstrates that they're not okay. Plenty I can say about that, but I'm gonna leave that alone. What I want to say is, as a Black man coming into that space, as many Black people know, coming into any corporate space, there's going to be tension, right? If I say something the wrong way, now I'm the angry Black man and I got an attitude and all of this. So just being in that space where I am not the dominant population, I'm going to be on edge. At the same time, if there is any sort of tension, there is a underlying assumption that I probably did something wrong. And so that makes it, for lack of a better term, a hostile environment. According to my research, Black men represent 2% of the field. And so we are not in there. It is extremely easy for a child to go their entire elementary, middle, and maybe even into high school without actually having a Black male faculty member. He might be the coach, or he might be the, working the grounds or something like that. But as a content expert, it is extremely rare. How do we get more Black men? I think this is the way, because now if I'm an instructor or I'm delivering something, I can do it from the crib. And I think that's fantastic. So thinking about ways that Black men can use their content knowledge and leverage the technology, I think is going to be the future, because in the classroom, it's just tense. I'll be honest with you. It's a tense environment to work in.
Excellent. So do we have any additional questions?
Hey, I'll just throw that in this there as well. I think, so I was in the classroom in elementary school for 7 years, and then 3 years in middle school and high school. And then I did a college class. So I was there more for passion over profit, because I had 3 kids and it was, difficult to make a living. So I was doing 3 jobs at the time. And I think some Black men, probably realize, and women, see the salary, and it's tough, when the school systems aren't paying enough.
It's true.
Yeah, it's tough to think. You got to really do what. Now, all the kids I've ever taught have been Black. I went into those school districts, but you got to want to do it, but you want to get paid too. And if you're going to have a family, it can be tough, if that's your only salary.
Yeah, I think that's an industry-wide problem. And so I do think that while the income issue has always been a problem, it's also been a bit of a filter, because we're not in it for the money. The problem I have is, if I'm not getting paid what I need, at least make it easy for me to do my job. At least treat me like a professional, right? At least give me the autonomy to manage the classroom in a way that I see fit. We've seen it. Maybe you guys have seen the meme where the guy was getting his hair braided by the kids and it turned into a whole thing. If you're not familiar, you might find it soon. So yeah, there's all sorts of tension when it comes to us being ourselves, and then without being paid properly, it's a mess. But in the interest of time, let me get back to level 2, which I think is also going to be interesting. So let me now transition to the school level. So we have had a chance to talk about a district. And when I say district, I'm not just talking about a public school district, but again, the charter school, you could have a charter school system that has, let's say, 1 high school, 3 middle schools, and 7 elementary schools, all in a nice fed system. And so that's also a great opportunity for someone to pitch. Okay. Back to my criticism of Gamma. So this is actually a slide that I left unedited. And it looks pretty, but it is not good information, right? So I appreciate it. What I was able to do was then transfer it over to something like this. So this was the slide, and then I converted it to this, which is school level at AI in education. So there's 6 areas here that I also think are worthy of note from a school level. So here, maybe you're going to pitch to a principal or an assistant principal or someone who can hear you out and find ways that you can make their lives much more efficient. And number 1 on that list would be administrative efficiency. If there is any way that you could help a school become more efficient in their administrative duties, then we have the opportunity to front face with our students. And that would be huge. So anything as it relates to, let's say you have an idea about helping us with staffing, figuring out based on how many students are coming in, how many staff should be purchased or should be brought on board, maybe with a staffing agency, if there's a way that AI could be used to help us find subs in a more efficient way. then I think we can talk about efficiency on that level. There's also a way that we can look at resource allocation. I have been at plenty of schools where I have questioned why we invest, $45,000 in a football team and we've won one game, but yet our science department doesn't have any beakers, right? And our art department doesn't have any paint. And so I think there's a way that we can use artificial intelligence to look at these budget outlays and then find ways. And this is, I think, the key part to artificial intelligence. It's its capacity to analyze data. And so if it could find ways to make, let's say, resources more properly allocated. Here's another one, and I'm trying to be mindful of the time. There's so much I could say. Classroom location. I've been in schools, especially our schools, underfunded urban schools. There's a Miss Debbie is her name. She's not here, but she's one of my best friends, right, in the classroom. And she is a dance teacher. Because she teaches an elective, if you're not familiar, here's how the education system works. So there are required classes that you have to take, and then there are a certain number of credits that a student needs in order to graduate. So one of the classes that I taught is chemistry. You have to take chemistry. Right? Now, you could choose to take a third science if you want, but you cannot graduate unless you pass my class. However, you still need, let's say, out of 85 required credits, you still need 15 elective credits. So she was one of these elective credits. So it was required for graduation, but a student didn't necessarily need to take her specific class. What they did to this lady was so wrong, y'all. When I have what's called a planning period. So a planning period is when I'm on work hours, but I don't have students. Oftentimes those planning periods are taken. I'm not going to go down that road. It's a hot mess. What I can tell you is this. During my planning period, I needed to vacate my classroom so that she can come into my classroom and do her dance thing. And then after my class, she had to go across campus to get that empty classroom and then go down this other way to get this other empty classroom. So if we could use artificial intelligence to think strategically about classroom location and the flow of teachers, then that would also be a big help. I'll run through the list very quickly, but thinking about scheduling, that could be artificial intelligence, monitoring attendance, and then sending out a robocall to the parents. All of that can be done using some artificial intelligence system. I'm sure of it. I don't know how to do it, but you guys who are thinking this through, these are the kinds of things that we need to happen in the school system. Generating reports. If we could send out a report to a parent to say, hey, your child has missed 5 days of school, and it's the first week of school. So they're pushing into chronic absenteeism. Getting that kind of information out, I think, is going to be important. Also think about developing a chatbot where if a parent needed to call and they wanted to announce something or talk to someone, or they had a question about what's coming up, when is prom, when's the last day of school, all of that stuff can be done through a chatbot. And so then our front office lady doesn't have to answer those questions. They can be fielded through the bot, and now she can be more present in the classroom. Having the autoresponders, thinking about school improvement plans. So I'll speak briefly to this, and then we can move on to communication patterns. Every year, let me say, generally speaking, about every 5 years, the school needs to be evaluated in order to maintain its certification in the school system. And so when these observers come, let's say from the state or from your Department of Education, they'll come, they'll walk around the room, they'll see what's going on, and then they will give their recommendations. And if there are problems, the school needs to create a document called a school improvement plan, how they are intentionally going to improve the processes or the flows, or how they're going to improve attendance, how they're going to improve literacy scores or reading scores. They have to write all of this out. And then over the course of time, they'll be giving that information back to their evaluators in order to maintain their certification. I think artificial intelligence is ideally suited to help these schools develop these school improvement plans. So this is one way that you can help with, and I'm just talking about administrative efficiency this whole time. But if I move on to communication patterns, could you imagine if artificial intelligence could look at the way that parents engage? Here's the trick. I'm putting y'all on game right now. What we do in education is what's called the opportunity to engage. And so what that means is, let's say we have the back to school night. And a lot of times in our schools, there will be 4, 5, 6 parents in the whole school that come to back to school night. Or if it's parent teacher conference time, or we're sending out newsletters about these things. All of those things, we say, if the parents don't come, it's not our fault because we created the opportunity for them to come. But if the parent has to work 2 jobs, if they travel, if they're not in town at the time, if they just don't give a damn, right? Whatever the case is, we absolve ourselves of the fact that our parents are not engaged because we sent the newsletter out, right? But sometimes that's blocked, or sometimes they don't care, they don't answer the phone, or they know the school's number. They're like, I don't want to hear that today. What if we could use artificial intelligence to analyze the way that parents engage and then send communication custom to the way that that parent wants to receive it? So maybe the parent doesn't want it by email, but they're very responsive by text. Or maybe they don't want that text, but they'll take that call. Okay. And just call me directly so I can come up there and deal with my child, whatever the case may be. And so I think artificial intelligence can help us deal with this issue of, well, we reached out, we sent the newsletter out, and they just didn't come. Now we have a way that we can target each individual parent in the way that they want to receive information, even though it can be the same information. So think about that. When I think about data analysis and infographics, we have, if you're a parent of a school-aged child, generally speaking, once a quarter or maybe once a semester, there will be a day-to-day where the students do not come to school and all the teachers stay in the building and we crunch out data. It generally happens at the beginning of the school year, and it will happen also at the beginning of the spring semester. But sometimes there's a day during the school year where the kids don't come and we just do data. We get these Excel spreadsheets. It is a grand waste of our time because we get all this data and then we have to like become Excel experts and organize that data in a way that we can find out that Marcus, which we know hasn't been coming to school, but now the data just says it. And so now we got to come up with a plan on how to deal with that. There has got to be one of you guys who can come up with a way that that data can be analyzed and formatted so that we can easily understand what's going on and come up with a responsive plan, maybe even using AI to develop that responsive plan. But the amount of time that I have spent, the amount of gray hairs that I have grown by trying to go through and crunch this data myself, when I'm a chemistry teacher and I'm sitting with the English teacher and the history teacher and the PE guy, and we're like, who knows how to do this Excel thing? And just because we get the raw data, please help me find a system that can organize that data and maybe even turn it out into a PDF so that I could be like, okay, here we go. Now we can spend more of our time planning and responding to the situation rather than figuring out what the situation is. Okay, I want to move on. I'm sorry, I'm just hitting it, but let me get through these two and then maybe we could do some Q's and A's. I wanted to talk about student-driven interventions. I think the low-hanging fruit is the adaptive learning models. Some of them are already out there, and I think there's still a lot of room for them to be designed. So when I think about an AI tool that can interact with the student, sort of like a personal tutor, then at the school level, now, so we have something in the school system which is called credit recovery. So let's say, for example, my student Diamond is not doing well and she has failed my chemistry class. And I work at a small charter school. There's only one high school in the whole system, and I'm the only chemistry teacher. Well, Diamond, you're gonna have to come back next year. But Diamond don't like me and I don't like her. So it's gonna be a long year for both of us. What the school has come up with is credit recovery. So what they can do is have Diamond actually keep her regular class, but then take my chemistry course online. She never has to come into my class. So she can do all this. She can watch the videos. She can do that whole thing. Now it becomes a challenge because then things start to stack, right? Now Diamond has chemistry, but then she also has her algebra class, and then she also has this. And this is how a student can end up in the 12th grade, but actually only have 9th grade or maybe 10th grade worth of coursework completed because we're still passing our kids along to the next grade and giving them this online system. So there's a lot of room for improvement when you think about student driven instruction in a way that they can recover their credit. So if you can find a system that can help students actually demonstrate mastery, I think a principal would love you for that and would probably buy your product. So thinking about that. I started, the organization that I started is called the Educator's House because I cannot stand PD. I don't know if there's any teachers in here, but PD tends to, it's one of the hugest wastes, I don't want to call it a waste of time, but it's a waste of time. Okay. It's either something that the principal could have sent me in an email. You don't have to please don't have me in this meeting to talk to me about, oh my gosh, let me stop. Lauren, hold me back, girl. I'm trying to keep it together here. I would love it if AI could help me come up with some relevant professional development hours, because what I'm going to do while principal such and so is talking about whatever, I'm trying to grade papers because I don't want to take this home. I want to play with my son. So if I can actually have something relevant that's interesting to me, or even customized for where I'm at, that would be fantastic. What traditionally happens is either the principal's trying to do it, and again, it could probably be done in an email, or they'll outsource it to a third-party company in Wisconsin, and I'm in Los Angeles, or I'm in New York, or I'm in Miami. Whatever's happening in the Midwest with all your Google data, it's not relevant to me. And so while I appreciate all those great best practices, trust me when I tell you, Diamond and Marquise, they not trying to hear all your ways to engage. Okay, so having something that's relevant is far better than having some outsourced company come in and do PD. So that's what the Educator's House is about. My approach to professional development is a bottom up rather than a top down. And so what I want to do is to get frontline educators together so that they can professionally develop each other rather than what's going on in the towers of academe. Let's talk about what's happening down on the ground level and how we can support each other. So keep your eye out for the Educator's House. I plan to be launching that soon after this conference is over. So PD topic selection is something that I think a principal would love to hear. And if there's a way that it can be done entirely on AI so that they have a less cost overlay, and it can be customized to what the teacher needs, and it can be customized to the location where that school is, then I think you've got a revenue opportunity there. And then the last one, which will be my bridge point between the school level and the classroom level, is special education. Special education is a box of chocolates, and at any particular school, you don't know what you're going to get. Some schools have very good special education departments, strong leaders who know the law. Some schools have school psychologists who really push on behalf of their students. And then some, it is not that case. And some special education departments are treating our children unfairly. They're engaged in illegal practices. And so if there's any way that somebody who may have some experience in special education can come up with an AI tool that can help not only administratively, i.e. designing good IEPs for the students, designing proper 504s. 504s are accommodations rather than an IEP is a legally bound document. Perhaps even thinking about what can happen with our gifted population, because gifted students are also in the special education department, but are all too often terribly overlooked because we're dealing with mild, moderate behavior issues or other developmental delays. But we have students on the other side of the spectrum that really could drag those numbers up and make on a school level, make the school look way better if we could really focus on those students who are in the, let's say, high yellow or green. Bringing them up could really help with the data. So I think there's a huge landscape, and I haven't spoken to all of my thoughts about special education, but from an administrative perspective, if there are AI tools that can be used, and if you know any, go ahead and drop them in the chat, then that would be fantastic. So those are my thoughts about how you all as AI technologists can use artificial intelligence and sell something to a principal or to a vice principal at an individual school. And then your business approach may be going from that school to the next school to the next school, and then moving up to a district level, right? Or going from the district and down. So then the third segment, I want to talk about ways that you can help an individual teacher. So before I get to that, I'm going to stop the share, see if we can field any questions. I only have 10 minutes left, but I do want to get some time to talk. So let me stop this and see what you guys have for me. Should I keep cooking? I don't know. What do you guys think?
This is good.
Okay.
Feel free to share your suggestions, thoughts in the comments. Also, feel free to share your LinkedIn. We want to definitely keep this conversation going. So feel free to share your information and thoughts in the chat.
Okay.
And you got great feedback on the pain points.
Fantastic. I'm going to be super brief with this next one because I think this is the one that's a little bit more obvious. And then if there's any questions or comments, I'll leave some time. So I apologize for going over it. This isn't usually my lane. All right, let me share this last little bit about what we can do with our class in the classroom. Thank you guys for entertaining me here. Classroom level AI in education. So this was the one that they gave me. I don't really love it, but it is something that I'm going to speak to. So there's two levels in terms of the classroom. One, how can you help the teacher? And then two, how can you help the student? So ways that you can help the teacher, once again, administrative efficiency. If you can help me with my classroom attendance, if AI can help me with other administrative tasks, if AI could help me communicate with parents, all of those things would be huge for me as the teacher. This thing I can't overemphasize, rethinking what grading is and what assessment is. Not everybody's a good test taker. So when you have this multiple choice thing, it's not going to hit all your different learning styles. And so with AI, if there's a way that you can broaden that and a way that I can make grading more efficient, because that's the thing that I spend so many hours trying to do by hand, then I would really love that. Student academic analysis. So what we do typically is something called a do now or a warm up. And that's what I call my formative assessment. So I give them this little 1 or 2 question thing, and then I have this stack of 30 pieces of paper. And then if I'm a high school teacher over the course of 7 periods, I've got 200 little pieces of paper that I got to figure out how to analyze in order to inform what I'm doing on the next day. No, baby. No, ma'am. Figure out a way that I can get that data into some system and let AI analyze that stuff. So I can figure out, okay, 80% of the kids got it. I think you're solid. Let's move on to the next. Or Johnny and Joey and Sharon over there, put them in a little group and then everybody else can move on. That kind of analysis, I think, would be huge. And then lesson planning, of course, I think is low-hanging fruit. But if you could figure out how I can just push out a lesson plan, I'm going to say 2 things and then I'll move on. Some schools are very serious about their lesson plans. Some schools buy pre-made lesson plans from the publisher. And then some schools want me to write the lesson plan and it ends up in a Google Drive that nobody looks at. So depending on what's happening in your school, if you could make lesson planning more efficient, that would be huge. When it comes to the student, AI can be a personal tutor. I think that's been seen. Khan Academy is trying to come up with a system to do that right now. So if there's a way that I can sit my kid with a good AI and it can ask Socratic type questions rather than giving out the answer, then I'm all about that business. Excuse me. I've talked about the interactive learning tool. So that's something that you can definitely get your toes into. This one, number 3, English as a second language. I'm confident. I've seen Duolingo. My kid's on it. I'm confident that artificial intelligence can help students who don't have English as their primary language or need other versions of literacy support can use artificial intelligence to help them with their pronunciation, with their grammar, and others. When it comes to issues of accessibility, if I have a student who's nonverbal, with the right AI system, they can be extremely verbal. And I've seen autistic students who are smarter than they're very intelligent. Okay. So if there's a way that we can help them using artificial intelligence to demonstrate greater literacy, greater numeracy, then I think that's a big W. So think about how you can create a tool that can help an individual student who's in the special education department. I think you've got money to make there. And then when it comes to formative feedback, and I talked about all those little sheets of paper, if there's a way that I can analyze that feedback, then I think you've got money. So I'm going to end there. That's all that I prepared. All this other stuff was a gibbity-gook that they gave me. So I don't need to show you all that. But yeah, that's what I was able to do. It gave me a good presentation and then I did a little fine tuning. But for you guys as AI people, think about it along these 3 levels. And I'm confident that there are ways that we could get this money. So that's what I got. Thank you guys.
Excellent, excellent. Is there any additional questions, comments, suggestions? I need a transcript of this meeting. This was excellent. This was amazing.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys. I have been doing this classroom thing for a long time, and I'm very excited about this new interface between, I'm trying to drop my LinkedIn in here so you guys can follow up with me. Believe me when I tell you there's a lot of room. So if any of you guys are thinking about ways that you can engage the school, holler at me. I'm happy to help just brainstorm through some ideas or bringing my levels of experience to it. Yeah, let me know, because I think the field is huge when it comes to using artificial intelligence in education.
Husan, what kept you in the classroom?
Fear. You want me to be honest with you?
Yes, please be honest.
It was my first career. And so when I fell in love with it, because it was baptism by fire. Okay. I won't go too long because
I
I
hear
don't
you.
have time. But after a while, I got into this mantra of I'm gonna quit next year. But then summer comes and it's just easier to go back. So a lot of it was the fear to take the risk to go do something different. I didn't really have the confidence to know that I had transferable, marketable skills. I deal with kids. How can I'm the master of getting a 16-year-old to do something that they don't want to do, which is, deal with the periodic table. They don't want to balance no equations. I couldn't figure out how to convert that into something that somebody else would want. So I just stayed.
Yeah.
But the reason that I decided to get out, I knew I was getting too old. These kids different. And I've been doing this for a whole generation. And I did not want to be that bitter old teacher that's just barking at the kids and angry all the time. And I couldn't be that guy. So an opportunity presented itself for me to take a big risk, and I shot my shot. And so here I am. But thank you for that.
Hey, it's
That's
on really quick.
wonderful.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Patty.
I'm done.
I was just going to say it's brilliant how you changed everything into an opportunity with AI. You literally taught us, now here's a problem, figure out a way to do something here. That's really, really great. I think it's by the way, y'all, mess around with prompts and say, hey, ChatGPT, I don't even know how to prompt this correctly to you, but someone suggested that there's this problem and here's what we want to fix. Can you tell me how to prompt you blankety blank? So in other words, I've said it before, I don't speak all this robot language. You're a robot. You know what kind of language you want to hear. I'm just starting out, but I see that problem and I want to be a part of it. So can you tell me how to prompt you? Yo, it's going to give you a very detailed prompt. You just copy and paste back into it. So just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Artificial intelligence can do the work. What we bring to AI is the creative intelligence. It's the creative problems that we submit into it in order to get some things out. And so I think if anybody could take some of these ideas and spend enough time, you're going to get something, and you're going to get something you can market. I'm confident about that.
And just one more thing. I want to say that any of you, I don't care what your job is, you can consult if you have been in that business long enough and you know that business as well as Husan knows what he just spoke to us about. You can, their skills, he mentioned so many things, talking to kids about whatever. Well, you're a salesman, you're an influencer. You did all of those things with severe patience, severe, because many of us wouldn't stand in front of kids. We would walk away. So you've got tenacity, you have a lot. And those of you on the call, remember that. When you leave, whatever your career is, there is something within what you do. All the problems that you see in your industry right now, that is an opportunity for you to fix in your consulting business.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm definitely grateful for this opportunity to present. Thank you guys for coming. I know it's the top of the hour, and I think there's another presentation at the next hour, if I'm not sure. So yeah, let's connect. This is something that I plan to be bringing. So you can find me on LinkedIn, but I'll also be posting some stuff on YouTube as well as on Instagram. So the brand hasn't been released. You guys are kind of getting an early concept of it, but it's called The Educator's House, and it will be something that I'm going to take into the next phase of my life. So I'm very excited about what's next.
Love it. And I want to say really quick that the next gentleman, Cedric, is extraordinary at homeschooling. He does classes to help folks when they're growing and developing homeschooling ideas and stuff for their kids. I think his is called Edu Hustle is the name of his program. So we unfortunately have to get out of here and get that other room started. So thank you Husan, thank you so much. Eric, y'all work extremely well together. Thank you all for doing this.
Yes.
I'm gonna shut this one down. Patty, thank you so much. And whoever can,
Thank
we'll
you.
see you in the next room. I'm sorry, Patty, go ahead. Oh, okay. And that's it. And we will go to the next room. This is going to close in 5, 4, 3, 2. Oh, hey, Cedric, I'm gonna go out and then we'll come back.